Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending our second ACE venture, Meet the Architect of the Capitol. My name is Katie Bowarski, and I am the Northeast Regional Director for the ACE Mentor Program of America, and I am thrilled to have the Architect of the Capitol here with us today. I want to spend just a couple of minutes going over a few housekeeping items before we get started. Please mute yourself for the duration of the presentation to ensure all of the participants can hear the presenter. We will be recording this session for those who are not able to attend it live. We will also have a Q&A portion of the meeting at the conclusion of Mr. Blanton's presentation. If you have a question during the presentation, please enter it into the chat box and we will answer as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. Now it is my honor to introduce Mr. J. Brat Blanton, the Architect of the Capitol. In his role, Mr. Blanton is responsible for facilities maintenance and operation of the U.S. Capitol building, the care and improvement of more than 570 acres of grounds, and the operation and maintenance of 18.4 million square feet of buildings. Today, Mr. Blanton will be sharing information on the Canon House office buildings renewal and their commitment to preserving our nation's history. Again, as you're joining, please make sure you're on mute so that all attendees can hear the presenter. And now, Mr. Blanton, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today for our second ACE venture. Take it away.
Thank you, Katie, and good afternoon to everybody from my office inside the Capitol. It's such a pleasure to be with you, and thank you for inviting me. I would much rather be doing this in person, and I'm sure you guys would rather see speakers in person as well, but I will say I applaud AC for hosting this venture. It's wonderful work that you guys are doing. As Katie said, I'm Brat Blanton, and I'm honored to serve as the Architect of the Capitol. You might be wondering, who is the Architect of the Capitol, and what do they do? Well, the Architect of the Capitol is a person, and I'm the 12th person in the history of the United States to hold this job. The first architect of the Capitol was appointed in 1793. But also, the Architect of the Capitol is an organization. And that organization serves as the builder and steward of the landmark buildings and grounds on Capitol Hill. We go by the initials AOC. AOC employees work every day to serve Congress and the Supreme Court, preserve America's Capitol, and inspire memorable experiences for all those who visit the buildings and grounds. The AOC is rooted in a tradition of unique craftsmanship and ingenuity. We have an incredible team of more than 2,000 employees with expertise in all areas of the construction industry, including architecture, engineering, electrical, masonry, landscaping, metalworking, painting, plastering, plumbing, and woodcrafting. We employ these experts in these tradescrafts to balance the unique responsibility of preserving historic buildings while meeting the needs of a modern workforce. I'm very excited to be here today with all of you. The next generation of the architect, construction, and engineering industry. It really does make me proud. Careers in architecture, engineering, and construction are challenging, rewarding, and frankly, exciting. Each career path requires us to be at the top of our games. Why? Because we truly are the people who build America. There's something incredibly satisfying about taking an idea and making it into reality, about seeing a problem, creating a solution, and implementing it, about preparing a century-old iconic building to handle the modern technologies while preserving the historic fabrics. This is what we do in the architect, engineer, and construction industry. I'd like to take a moment to look at the drawings of the Capitol Dome on this slide. I'm sure all of you have seen the photos from the outside, but did you know the dome is actually a dome within a dome? The walls you see from the outside are not the same you see from the inside. The engineering drawings on the left show the crane that was actually used to construct the dome. The middle photo shows a cut through of the dome. Notice how the inside of the dome doesn't go all the way to the top. And there's a fresco painting that's suspended from the structure at the top. And you can see that structure is that dark black rim that goes around the inside dome. To the right is a typical view you see of the Capitol dome. Also, something else you may not know. Did you know this is the second Capitol dome constructed? The first was made of wood and much smaller. As the Capitol was expanded to make room for new Senate and House members as the nation expanded, the old dome looked too small. So a new, larger cast iron dome was constructed. This was the first of this kind of dome constructed in the world, but it had to fit in the same opening as the original dome. And the building's foundation had to support the new, heavier dome. This is an example where the architect, engineering, and construction industries faces challenges, produces grand results, and solves problems. I'm heartened to see all of you and your interest in finding meaningful careers in this field. There are so many possibilities, many of which you will learn through the ACE program. I'd like to take a moment and get a sense of your interests. What sparked your interest in this field? You can type your answers in the chat box. Was it a school project you completed? A unique building you visited? Or do you just enjoy hands-on work? I can tell you for me, it started as I've always had a fascination with things that were mechanical. I remember always wanting to build stuff, whether it was skateboarding ramps as a kid, or taking apart my bike and finding out how the brakes work or how the gears work on a bike, and then figuring out how to put it back together again when you didn't put them all in one area. And I'm seeing some great responses on here. Robotics, yes, that is a definite field of engineering. Hands-on work. There is something great about being able to build something with your hands, look back and say, wow, I did this. I feel accomplished for doing that. Solving problems, exactly. Creativity is one of the most important parts about being an engineer or an architect, or even just working in the construction field. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my path into this industry, but there are many different paths you can take. There are various routes of how to be in the architect, engineering, and construction industry. Some of you may pursue a college degree in the field like I did, but you can major in almost any engineering or architecture program and still work in a place like the Capitol. Others of you may attend trade school, take on apprenticeships, or pursue opportunities in the military where there are great opportunities to work in the construction and engineering fields. There is no right way, and your path may not be a straight line. As long as you are pursuing your passions and using your creativity, you will find a career that is fulfilling. And that is key, to show up every day and say, I love going to work. For me, I received a Bachelor of Science in Aeronautical Engineering from the United States Naval Academy and a Master's of Science in Ocean Engineering from Virginia Tech. Now you may think, what does aeronautical engineering, planes, and ocean engineering, the ocean, have to do with maintaining the Capitol? Well, prior to joining the Architect Capitol, I spent more than 20 years as a U.S. naval officer in our Civil Engineer Corps working on planning, designing, and construction projects. And I worked on some of the largest construction projects undertaken by the Navy. After retiring from the Navy, I led a federal infrastructure services sector of a private engineering firm. While there, I implemented a strategy to help the company recruit the best architects and engineers. I'll tell you this, one of the things that I always looked for in people was creativity, love of their work, and a dedication to bettering themselves. And that's important. We should always want to continue learning and have a passion for finding new things. Most recently, I worked at the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, leading the capital planning, design, and construction program for the 2 large airports in the Washington, D.C. area. Today, as the 12th architect of the Capitol in the history of the United States, I head the federal agency. And lead the incredible employees who work every day on the buildings and grounds of America's Capitol campus. These include the Capitol itself, the House and Senate office buildings, the Supreme Court, the Library of Congress, the United States Botanic Garden, the Capitol Power Plant, just to name a few. Our more than 2,000 employees preserve and maintain these historic buildings, monuments, art, and inspirational gardens on the Capitol campus. We have over 18.4 million square feet of buildings with 30,000 daily occupants and a budget of nearly $750 million a year to preserve and maintain all these spaces. In a non-pandemic year, we welcome more than 3 million visitors each year to the Capitol through the Capitol Visitor Center, the historic Capitol grounds, and the United States Botanic Garden. And we support some really big, important national events, like the presidential inauguration every 4 years. One question I hear sometimes is, why do we still need an architect at the Capitol? The Capitol's already built. Yes, well, that's true. But these historic buildings won't last forever on their own. So we do a lot of maintenance and restoration to ensure that the buildings in the Capitol maintain their original history while incorporating modern technology and systems. One prime example of our work that's ongoing right now is the Canon Renewal Project. The Canon House office building was completed in 1908, making it the oldest of the House office buildings. In recent years, it became clear that the Canon building was in need of a complete renewal. The Canon building has not received a comprehensive upgrade to its systems since the 1930s. And many of these building systems are original, dating back to the 1908. Over the last several years, the building has experienced plumbing leaks, plaster cracks and chunks falling off of the ceiling, chunks of decorated stone dislodging from the building exterior and falling onto the ground. It became a real safety problem. So to protect the building's long-term functionality and safety, we embarked on a 10-year, 5-phase renewal project. The project will improve the functionality of the building for both members and staff, making it far more efficient, comfortable, and safer, all while retaining the historic grandeur of the building. The renewal project will replace key building systems such as heating, cooling, lighting, plumbing, fire, life safety, and accessibility and structural integrity. Basically, we are tearing everything out and putting it back in new. Each phase takes approximately 2 years and aligns with the congressional move cycles. It's a very tight schedule. As such, we are tackling one wing of the building at a time so we can complete this important project with minimal disruptions to building occupants. Construction occurs around the clock, and the noisiest work takes place during the night or early in the morning. Our goal is to update the systems and make the building functional for the modern workforce, while maintaining as much of the historic fabric of the building as possible. One way you see this is in the new 5th floor. The 5th floor was initially added to the Canon building in 1913, but was designed only as a storage space. As part of the renewal project, we're constructing a completely new 5th floor, which will have offices for members of Congress on each side of the corridor. What you see on this picture is a rendering of what the new 5th floor looks like. You'll notice that it doesn't look exactly like the rest of the building. We wanted to have the floor mesh with the original building, but we didn't want to create a false sense of history with this renewal project. We felt that it should be clear when looking at the building which parts are original and what is new. Here's some photos showing the ongoing work on the Canon building. You can see the scaffolding is up and how we are tackling one section at a time. Also, we're working with a variety of different materials, many of which are original to the building. What you see on these photos here is stonemasons restoring marble features, but also modern metal stud wall framing to put up modern construction material. We're performing much needed repairs. Those lines in the walls are from cracked plaster. You can see how extensive the repairs were, these cracks. Look at the ceiling. That's pretty scary. That was someone's office. Outside, we're doing detailed restoration work to the fine details of the stone. And we're updating the building systems. By the end of this project, we will have an office building for members of the House of Representatives that look and feel like it's from 1908, but with fully modern technology and security. As shown in the photos, the types of projects we undertake at the Architect Capitol involve expertise in all aspects of architecture, construction, and engineering. We're always looking to add to our workforce with the best and brightest in the industry. The ACE Mentor Program, the ACE Mentor Program, is a wonderful opportunity to explore all this industry has to offer and discover your passions. You won't learn just about careers. You have an opportunity to be fully immersed in hands-on projects that will test your creativity and help you grow. You'll be able to connect with other students who share your interests. Learn from each other, push each other, challenge each other. Also, you will be able to connect with experienced mentors who can provide you with support, advice, and guidance as you pursue your passions. These relationships will be invaluable to you as you move forward in your careers. It's through collaboration and cooperation that great things get done. As you think about your careers, I would encourage you to also consider public service. Either at the military, federal, state, or local level, public service is a great way to better your community through your own passions and your career. If you're interested in learning more about the Architect Capitol, I would encourage you to visit our website or follow us on social media. I will say we have wonderful videos on YouTube about the projects we've done. And if you want to learn about the Capitol Dome, there is some great videos to look up on YouTube. I thank you all for your time and your attention. I wish you the best of luck in pursuing your education, your career, and your passions. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you so much, Mr. Blanton. What a great presentation. Students, please enter your questions into the chat box for Mr. Blanton, and we'll get to as many as we can. The first question that I had, Mr. Blanton, was, did you have a mentor in your life that helped you get to where you are today?
Yes, that's great. I've had several mentors throughout my career. Some of them started when I was in the Navy, and then others have been mentors that I picked up after I retired from the Navy. And I will say, as someone who has both mentored and as someone who has been mentored, it's a relationship that is very, very important. And and once you develop that trust with those people, they can help you for the rest of your life.
That's great. We've got some questions coming in now. It is my understanding that energy managers design programs that increase efficiency and reduce energy costs. What actions, if any, are being taken to make the Canon House office building and other buildings more sustainable and environmentally friendly?
That's a great question because this is one of my passions. So we are using all high efficiency equipment in there. We are following LEED-like standards, although we don't get certified by LEED because it's a private organization. And so the Canon building itself is actually going to be one of the most efficient buildings on the Hill when it's done.
Wow. How much does the cast iron dome weigh?
That's a good question, and I'll have to get back with you on that. I don't know.
Let's see. Next question, what does your typical day consist of?
So typically I come in the morning and have a stand-up meeting with my staff, and we go over what the events for the day will be. And I can tell you every day is completely different and every day is completely typical. One of the great things about this job is also one of the challenging things about this job is there are a lot of customers that I have. 535 members of Congress, 100 senators, 435 members of the House of Representatives. All of them want to say in what I have to do for the day. So sometimes I may have a plan and then it'll change and I'll spend the entire rest of my afternoon doing something else.
Next question, how is the architect of the Capitol selected?
Oh, that's another very good question. So there's a panel that is there's a joint bicameral, bipartisan panel that recommends to the President of the United States a number of candidates. And then the President selects a candidate for the architect of the Capitol, and it's a 10-year job. After it's selected, it's actually nominated. Then it needs to be approved by the Senate. And then finally sworn in. And for me, I was sworn in by the Chief Justice Roberts.
Next question, about how long did it take to build the US Capitol?
So it's an interesting question on that is you can almost say we're still building it, but we're not, because it's always somewhat expanding a little. The original Capitol was built in multiple phases, but what you see there today wasn't really completed until the 1850s.
Good question. What was the first step you took out of high school to pursue the career that you wanted?
So I went to the Naval Academy, and so I always knew that I wanted to be a naval officer, and engineering has always been a very strong part of the Navy. And to be honest, I didn't know I was going to ever be in the facilities engineering realm. I thought maybe I wanted to do something else, but it just happened to be an opportunity that arose, and I'm very happy I took that opportunity. I listened to guidance of very senior people who told me what a great career it is, and then I jumped it, and running ever since.
That's great. Next question, have you met with any well-known members of Congress or the President?
Actually, yes, I interact quite regularly with members of Congress. And I'm not going to name names, but that's my job to interact with them.
Why is it important to mark which parts of the Capitol building are new additions?
So one of the concepts about historic preservation is really letting you know what is the original stuff and what is the stuff that we are putting on later. So what I would say is the architects who designed the 5th floor were trying to make it compatible with the building. So it doesn't look like it's something completely different, but you look at it and you can say it's a little more modern than they built back then. And it's really to show you what the original building used to look like. And so you can clearly see in your mind when you look up at the Canon, oh, this is what the old building was. Because even that roof structure that we're taking down and building the 5th floor on, that was built after.
Thank you. What aspects do you think are more important when you consider a career in architecture?
So I'm gonna mix all of it together because I am an engineer, not an architect. If you consider a career, I would say you have to love math, you have to love problem solving, and you have to be able to look at a problem and say, okay, this problem may feel like it's too big, but I can break it down into smaller pieces that I can solve, and then I'll be able to solve the bigger problem. It's really a way of thinking.
Thank you. Next question, do you have a favorite building on the grounds?
Yes, I do. And I can have a favorite spot also. I can say my favorite building is the Capitol itself. And my favorite spot is the top of the dome. It's a view of DC that you cannot see anywhere else. And if I ever need to clear my mind, I can go up there and I'll read that.
Sounds beautiful. Next
Here,
question.
David, I got it.
You said that
Yep.
each architect has
So
a job.
somehow you're missing it.
Okay. You said that each architect has a job for 10 years. What do you plan to do next?
Oh, sorry. Can I answer an earlier question first?
Yes.
That answer? The dome weighs 9.1 million pounds.
Wow.
So what do I plan to do for my tenure? One of the things that I was brought aboard to do was transform this agency into really a model, customer service oriented architect engineering firm. And so we have several big initiatives that we're doing. One of them is we're starting out what I call Vision 2100. And this is looking at the Capitol grounds from a perspective of what do we want it to be in the year 2100? What are some of the things that are going to change around the world? What are some of the disruptors, the new technologies that are going to change? So maybe we don't need to have the roads where we have the roads. We don't need certain things. I mean, you see how we've gone from everybody used to drive to work. Now you have electric scooters and electric bikes, and they're talking Uber and Lyft are talking about flying vehicles. And so what are we going to need to have to support that stuff in the year 2100? And so we're kind of looking at the Capitol, preserving everything the way it is now, but how can we modernize it and modernize it in a way so that we don't get caught by surprise by new technology and then aren't able to support it.
Thank you. This is a good question. As the architect of the Capitol, do you design everything or manage other architects?
So that's a very good question. I have a staff of architects and engineers, and they do most of the work. As you start getting more senior in your careers, you will start out doing actual design work yourself. And then pretty soon you'll start managing projects that'll have other people that you're working as a team together. And then as you get more senior, you'll start managing teams. So, and then by the time you get to around my age, you really are managing people. And that's when you go from a manager to a leader. And a leader is a leader of people. A manager can manage a project and do it very, very well. And so that's part of what I do in my job. It's meant to inspire my staff, make sure that they are knowing that they have all the resources they need to perform their job the best they can.
It's a good question that just came in, and we're getting to the end of the question, students. So if you have any final questions for Mr. Blanton, please put them in the chat box. How does security on the job site vary from other sites?
So security is very serious on the Capitol. And it's interesting because I came from the airport, and it's very serious at airports too, as well as in the military. So typically on a job site, and this is any good construction site, whether it's for a building that's being built out in town, or it's for or something that's being built on a federal campus like the Capitol. Typically, you have one entrance in and one entrance out. What we do is we have to screen all the people going in. They all have to have background checks. They also have to make sure that they don't have criminal records. They have to make sure that we don't allow drugs and alcohol on site, or people who are under the influence of that. So it is pretty serious. And we do take that serious because we don't want people sneaking in and doing something bad to the buildings.
Next question, how often do the gardens get redesigned?
So major redesigns are not very common, but every season there is a minor redesign to the gardens. Well, maybe new plants will be put in. because a lot of us, we have set planting beds. If you go over to the gardens out at the Botanic Gardens, you can see some of those as they're putting in what would be fruits and vegetables that you could eat right from there. And so those are designed every year.
Could you talk a little bit about what you worked on during your time in the Navy?
Yes. So I was with the Navy Civil Engineer Corps, and I was also saw that I was an ocean engineer. Well, part of that I was in what we call the Ocean Facilities Program. So I was on the underwater construction teams where we would do construction underwater, which was, to me, one of the most exciting things that I could ever think about doing. But then some of the bigger projects I did was down at Charleston Air Force Base. We built a number of large buildings there for when they changed the airframe for the Air Force to a much larger frame, and it didn't fit in the airplanes didn't fit into the current hangars. When I was in Japan, I had about $1 billion worth of construction going on, and this was very unique because in the time it was an area that the government of the Empire of Japan used it to store their ammunition, and so we bombed a lot of it. And so during the construction, we would often find our old unexploded ordnance in there. We didn't have to shut down the construction sites. So it was a scary thing to dig while in Japan.
Do you get to reject projects for feasibility issues?
Yes. We have a series of standards that we go through from the conception, the idea of a project, to determining whether there's funding for it, to its constructability, to just does it fit in with the materials of the capital itself.
Next question, what are some of the things you did in high school and college to reach the position you are in now?
Okay, high school took advanced, it wasn't called STEM then, but advanced math and science classes. That was my passion. I can say too, I went to the Naval Academy. It has a mission to develop people morally, mentally, and physically. And I always put a fourth one on there, is socially as well. And so I would say that if you think about your development through that life and those lenses of, are you doing stuff that's developing your morality? That means your character more than anything else. Your mental, your education, you continue to want to learn. Physical, it's very important to be physical because that's going to help you with your brain. It helps you reset. And then social, you need to have people that you can count on and people that count on you.
Thank you. How much influence or say does the current Congress administration have in the design of decision designs?
So what they do is they will appropriate, which means they will pay for the project. And then we seek approval to begin the project. They have very little influence on the actual design unless it's something that becomes a key issue to members of Congress. But a lot of stuff we do, they don't see. For example, we have miles of underground pipes that are pushing warm water and steam and chilled water in the summer for air conditioning. That's a project they don't see, and so they have very little influence on what we're doing the designs of how to repair these old tunnels. But there's some projects that are passions to them, and so they're very interested.
Here's a good question for any architect. How has the contractor been performing at the Canon House? Have they been meeting the schedule and the budget?
The contractor has been doing well. There have been some challenges from unplanned and unknowns that we have. Any building that is built in 1908 had and Band-Aid is put on for years. You find things that you didn't think it was in that bad of a condition. So every phase we have gotten done on time. We've had some challenges with the work that we didn't think we'd have to do because it was in such bad condition. that we ended up having to pay for extra work. But that's not uncommon in facilities management of an old building.
Next question, how many hours do you work each week?
I feel like I'm constantly working, because even when I'm home in the evenings, I'm getting calls.
And along those lines, in non-COVID times, how often do you travel for work?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I've only been the architect since January, the end of January. And so then COVID hit. And so I haven't traveled once.
Do you have an expectation as to what that travel might be like once we're out of the pandemic?
Yeah, my understanding is that I will be traveling a good deal, attending conferences, meeting other delegations from other nations that manage their own parliamentary type structures.
Next question, how does the outreach for the next architect of the Capitol begin? Do you have the most say on who will be the next architect of the Capitol?
So it'll begin with that panel that is made up of the bicameral, meaning both houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives, and bipartisan, both parties. And that panel will start a search for it. Now, what they did for mine was to hire a firm that goes through and looks for resumes or people of certain positions that they think could be it, and then they recommended a large number to the panel who went and reviewed. I will say, depending on how well I do, I'm sure there would be a good influence from me saying I think this person would be the best. But it's meant to be something that there's not politics involved. That's why they're using all four sides of it: House, Senate, Republicans, Democrats, and then nominating to the president. So in theory, should be very little influence.
This is based off your answer to that question. What is the purpose of meeting with other countries' architect of the Capitol counterparts? Oh,
that's a great question, because we have, so we'll say, for example, Canada. Right now, they're undergoing a huge renovation and construction, very similar to how we built our Congressional Visitor Center. And the idea is that we would share lessons learned from our projects with them, and they can share stuff with us that we may not have been able to pick up. Great Britain right now is going through a significant renovation as well of some of their buildings. And so it's important for us to all talk amongst the managers of parliamentary properties around the world.
Did you spend time studying law or political science in order to prepare for working as a part of the federal government?
Good question. The most law I've had to do with contract law, and that was training that was provided to me when I was in the Navy, because in the Navy, every single person who is in the Civil Engineer Corps is also a contracting officer, so they have to know how to follow the laws for federal laws for contracting. Political science, I can tell you, it's one of those things that became a passion for me. When I was in school, I will honestly say that history and political science was something that got in the way of engineering. But when I since graduated, I can say that it's become something I'm much, much more interested in.
How do you and the other architects get new ideas and keep your minds fresh? And second part, do you have any dream projects for the grounds while you are serving as the architect of the Capitol?
First part of the question is, how do we get new concepts? It's attending industry shows. You have an organization like ACE who brings in fresh ideas from the consultants who are members of it. It's important, as I said, about the passion for wanting to better yourself. those new ideas are part of bettering yourself. It's always going out, attending these events, speaking at these events, because new ideas will come up that you can say, oh, I never thought of that, and that may work with us.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Blanton, for taking the time to speak with our students today. As you know, our students are interested in a variety of career paths in the integrated design and construction industry. You offered so much advice already. Is there one final piece of advice that you could offer our students that really stands out in terms of their path and making their decision for their futures?
Can I answer that last question that popped up first?
Oh,
I think
yes.
it's a pretty good one.
Go ahead. I missed that one.
Yeah, so do you feel that the position is politicized, or does it remain fairly insulated from political pressures? Now, that's a great question, because it's a balancing line that we have to have. We are not a political organization, but we work in a political environment. So we always have to make sure that we have feet on both sides of the aisle and stay there. Sometimes we do things that upset one party, and sometimes we're going to upset another party, but we have to look out for the Capitol for the long run. My job is to make sure that 200 years from now, the Capitol is still there because of smart decisions that I made with my staff.
We did have one more come in. Do you enjoy your job?
Yes, absolutely. I am in awe every day when I come walk into the Capitol and say that I work here. And I work in a museum. So back to your question about one thing, I would say I kind of repeat what I was saying. Keep that passion for learning. Find, whether you want to be an engineer that does robotics, electronics, civil engineering, find something that's your passion, because you want your career to be something that you say, I am glad I did this, and I'm happy I'm here. And I can say I was lucky enough to find that for me.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Blanton. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak with our students and answer so many of their questions. Students, thank you for joining in to our second ACE venture, and we hope everyone has a great evening. Thanks, everyone.
All right, bye.